Shadow Hack. Chapter 911, Bowing Out Easily. Li Yunmu looked through the small crack in the hollow of his palm into the heavenly world just in time to see the mortals throwing small rocks at the gods imprisoned in the box. They were only ordinary stones without any special effects, but he added electric shock-like attribute to each stone that hit a god. The reason for doing this was to remove the fear in the hearts of mortals towards gods. This method could be considered as the most direct one. Even the palace maids who were previously afraid of gods began to pick up small stones and throw them. The 15 gods screamed miserably. Li Yunmu closed the crack in his palm and continued walking. When he reached the border between Lakshmi City and Azura City, almost all the villages in the territory of Lakshmi City had been placed in his heavenly world. If anyone flew over the territory of Lakshmi City at that moment, they would discover deep holes all around as if they were traces of a large battle. Once Li Yunmu stepped into the territory of Azura City, he turned into black fog and gradually fused with the surrounding scenery while flying toward the Ore Mountain. Within an instant, the black fog passed through the forest and returned to his main body. When Li Yunmu opened his eyes, he looked at the beautiful women lying around him with a tranquil expression. He stood up and walked out, then looked at the few remaining girls who were hurriedly walking around the camp. While on his path, Li Yunmu stopped a seemingly 18-year-old girl with a ponytail. The girl holding a laundry bucket raised her head. When she saw Li Yunmu before her, she immediately began to shudder. She bent her knee and said while stammering, "LL Lord." Li Yunmu looked at the flustered young girl and asked with a frown, "What's your name?" The young girl saw that Li Yunmu's gaze was focused on her, and she lowered her head in alarm. "My name is Xiao Nan." "Xiao Nan." Li Yunmu repeated it once and suspiciously looked Xiao Nan, whose head was still lowered. "Are you afraid of me?" Xian Nan tightly clutched the laundry bucket with her hands while thinking in her heart, "Doesn't my behavior display it clearly?" When Li Yunmu had arrived at the Ore Mountain, she had heard that Supervisor Yanqiu had sent a group of beautiful women to him. Every day, a different one went in, and soon the camp was full of rumors that Lord was a sex fiend. As long as a woman came into his sights, they were not able to avoid him. Xiao Nan lowered her head even more and said, "No, Lord is such a handsome god, how could Xiao Nan be afraid of seeing you? I was only startled when an unfamiliar man stopped me." When Li Yunmu heard her words, he looked at his hand holding Xian Nan's shoulder and quickly pulled it back. "I am sorry, I subconsciously caught your shoulder just now. I want you to do something for me." "What?" Xiao Nan alertly retreated a few steps. "If it is that kind of thing, then I won't do it." Li Yunmu sized up Xiao Nan, who was as thin as a reed, and said, "I don't like flat chests, so you don't need to worry. I want you to find all the laborers of Ore Mountain. There's something I want to declare." Upon hearing that, Xiao Nan nodded while feeling that something was wrong. But after receiving the order, she placed her laundry bucket to the side and rushed to the Ore Mountain. Right then was the time when all the miners were collecting resources in the caves, so Li Yunmu turned his head and walked toward Yanqiu's tent. Once he entered it, Yanqiu looked at Li Yunmu with a hint of astonishment in his eyes. "Shouldn't the sixth ancestor be enjoying his springtime in the tent? Why have you come to my poor dwelling?" Yanqiu said with a smile while quickly thinking about what had changed. In the past few days, he had sent groups of young beauties in Li Yunmu's tent so he would continue to enjoy himself, but it seemed that he had bowed out easily. Yanqiu had been constantly trying to contact Jiaoxiu, but wasn't able to get a precise reply from him. Previously, they had discussed that Chenqiu would be dealt with on the path to the resource land, but in the end, Ji reached the Ore Mountain safely. After that, clan patriarch Jiaoxiu wouldn't give him any instructions for the next step. It was unknown whether he should kill him or hand the land over. Stuck between two difficult choices, Yanqiu could only continue dragging it out. While he didn't have clear orders on how to deal with the matter, he would never make any moves toward Chenqiu. Just based on the fact that Azura had personally promoted him to his son, he wouldn't dare to attack. But he also didn't want to hand over the ore mountain. The resource land was far from Azura city, so with the emperor being far away, he could act as he wanted. Not only did every mortal tribe offer him extremely beautiful young girls, he also got to embezzle resources. They might not be exchanged for power of belief, but if he continued to accumulate them, then someday if some other god required them, he could exchange them for a favor. Li Yunmu sat down and glanced at Yanqiu with a faint smile. Today I came to find you to discuss the matter of this ore mountain. When Yanqiu heard the words ore mountain, his heart began to thump loudly, for he knew it was the worst case scenario. Chenqiu had come to take over the resource land. Yanqiu was supposed to hand over the ore mountain and return to Azura city, but he didn't want to do so. He wouldn't be able to act as a local tyrant once he returned and became just another god-level elder. What does Ancestor want to say? Can you explain it in simple terms? Yanqiu said with a smile. Li Yunmu stretched his arms and legs, then looked at Yanqiu and said, "It's not much. I came here in order to replace you. After all, this ore mountain doesn't belong to Moro clan anymore, but Ground clan. But seeing that you have been serving me with your utmost, I can let the Moro clan have this ore mountain and you can still continue being the supervisor of it." The smile on Yanqiu's face froze, and a hint of confusion appeared in his eyes. What kind of situation was this? When Li Yunmu said the words ore mountain, he had already started thinking of a better way to stall. But now, Li Yunmu surprisingly said that he would leave the ore mountain to Moro clan, and Yanqiu could continue to act as a supervisor. Yanqiu snapped to attention and said, "Does the sixth ancestor have any other requests?" "I do have a request. Give all the laborers of Ore Mountain to me. You can recruit other miners." Did the sixth ancestor go crazy? He didn't want a good resource land like the Ore Mountain but a group of Azura people who had been turned into laborers after being penalized. What was the use of those people? The majority of them were sage flux experts. Only one elder among them was at half-god realm. Such people couldn't compare to the Ore Mountain. No one in the clan would want to come to recruit them, but they would like the resource land to stay in their hands. Yanqiu revealed a smile and slowly said, "I really can't understand sixth ancestor's thinking, but since the sixth ancestor wants all the laborers of Ore Mountain, I naturally wouldn't decline." Li Yunmu waved his hand, then walked out of the tent. When its front cloth dropped down, he said, "I will be taking away the laborers to return them home." Chapter 912, Recruitment. Li Yunmu walked out of the tent when Xiaonan just happened to bring over the laborers covered in dust in front of him. He saw that the majority of the laborers were sage flux experts. Only the elder who had previously gone to call Yanqiu was a half-god expert. But having a cultivation base couldn't change anything in Ore Mountain. Each and every day, they would keep collecting resources from the caves, so they were no different from ordinary people. The majority of the laborers were branch family descendants of Moro clan who had offended the direct descendants and had been sent to the Ore Mountain to work. Only a small minority belonged to the lower city, but despite originally belonging to different classes in Azura city, they were all doing the same thing. The leader half-god remained overcautious and respectfully said, "Lord, you asked Xiaonan to bring us over. Do you need something from us? Today I called you over to ask you something. Is there anyone among you who wants to leave the Ore Mountain? Don't worry, I am not joking with you. You all also don't need to be anxious, just reply to me sincerely." Li Yunmu slowly said. The moment he finished, the laborers looked at the people next to them suspiciously. When the half-god elder first heard the words, a dazzling light blossomed in his eyes. The next instant though, they dimmed again. Although the other party had said that he wasn't joking, saying stuff like that they could leave was something that they didn't dare to believe in. He looked at Li Yunmu and cautiously said, "Is Lord making fun of us? From the time we left Azura city, we became unable to return and were turned into abandoned people." When Li Yunmu heard the half-god elder's words, he said with a faint smile on his face, I will naturally help you lose the identity of abandoned people. That is, if you follow me to Azura City and are willing to break away from your original clan to become members of Ground Clan. Ground Clan. When did a Ground Clan appear in Azura City? I remember when this lord came, Lord Supervisor called him Lord Ancestor. Could this lord be a Lord Ancestor of Azura City? The half-god elder standing in the front listened to the discussion of laborers behind him. He had been in the Ore Mountain for a very long time, so long that he no longer knew how many years had passed. However, he still remembered the appearance of the ancestor of Moro clan he had seen before, and it didn't match that of Li Yunmu. It could be judged that Li Yunmu wasn't an ancestor of Moro clan, but his appearance matches that of branch family descendant of Moro clan, since he had a face at the front and back of his head, just like the Eld. Yet the Lord was able to become an ancestor after being born as a branch family descendant of Moro clan? The half-god elder bowed slightly and suspiciously said, I would like to ask Lord, when did Azura City have a ground clan? Before Li Yunmu could say anything, Yanqiu walked out from the tent behind him and looked at the group of laborers. You all were found guilty and sent to Ore Mountain many years ago, so you naturally don't know anything about Azura City, he said with disdain in his voice. Although Lord Chenqiu was born as a branch family descendant of Moro clan, he was adopted as the sixth son by Godfather, which made him into the sixth ancestor of Azura City. Lord Ancestor then created the fifth clan in Azura City and called it the Ground Clan. The descendants of Ground Clan are the former slum dwellers of Lower City. While he spoke, there seemed to be a large wave rising among the laborers. The eyes of the half-god elder who was acting as the leader went wide while looking at Li Yunmu, and he remained speechless for a long time. When did the branch family descendants become so successful? Also, it was no wonder then that he possessed the cultivation of the god realm despite being a descendant of Moro clan. The other laborers were also excited. They clearly remembered Li Yunmu's words from a minute ago. He was the sixth ancestor of Azura City and possessed a revered position, so the words out of his mouth were very precious and could hold not lies. Lord, what you said just now, was it true? Can you really take us out of Ore Mountain? Can you really remove our status of abandoned people? If you can, then Lord, I am willing to be a descendant of Ground Clan. One after another, the originally full of despair eyes of the laborers filled with energy, and they spoke over one another. Even the half-god elder standing at the front nervously looked at Li Yunmu. Everything is real, none of those who want to return will be left behind. Li Yunmu looked at the group of the excited laborers and nodded. After he spoke, a divine presence erupted from his body. He extended his palm, and it enlarged countless times in front of the laborers. A crack was in the hollow of palm, and it quickly expanded to reveal a world inside. Anyone who wants to leave can enter the world in my palm. When Li Yunmu said that, the half-god elder standing at the front looked inside. Without hesitating, he then entered, and the other laborers looked at each other before going into the crack one after another. Before long, all the laborers were within the heavenly world. Yanqiu standing by the side saw the crack in Li Yunmu's palm, and a glimmer of greed appeared in his eyes. A space which could store living people was naturally a treasure. He had been a god for many years, but he had never obtained such a divine treasure, so when he saw it, sinister thoughts took root in his heart. He thought once more if he should make his move on Li Yunmu or not. He had been a god for several years while Li Yunmu had been raised in a few days by Godfather who had used power of belief on him. With this kind of method, he would at most be a false god. Unlike him, Yanqiu had only used power of belief after rising to half-god realm step by step. Many years had passed since then, and he had become a mid-stage god, so he should possess more than enough strength to deal with Li Yunmu. However, Azura was backing Li Yunmu. If Azura had given any trump cards or if Azura one day learned that he had killed Li Yunmu, then the world in the palm wouldn't make up for the losses. Although treasures were important, his life was even more valuable. Li Yunmu pulled back his palm, then turned to look Yanqiu, who was fighting a war in his heart, and said with a mysterious smile, "Are you interested in this world in my palm?" After saying that, Li Yunmu extended his palm toward Yanqiu with the crack slowly fusing in it. Yanqiu snapped to attention to look at the crack, but divine presence erupted from Li Yunmu's body, and the man retreated a few steps. "Remember, tell the clan patriarchs that I will collect this gift, so they should wait for my return gift." After those words, his figure fluctuated, and he turned into a blur that flew toward Azura City. Yanqiu looked at Li Yunmu's figure, which turned into a black dot in the sky, and immediately heaved a sigh of relief. When he shot a glance into the world in the palm, he sensed the presence of 15 gods. When he associated it with the missing gods of the 4 clans, Yanqiu's heart filled with dread. There were even late-stage gods among the 15 gods, but they were all defeated by Li Yunmu. When Yanqiu looked at the world in the palm, he had the thought of stealing it, but if he had attempted anything, he probably would have also fallen into the world in the palm. Chapter 913, The 4 Clans Are Shocked. After calming his heart, Yanqiu looked at the empty camp and thought in his heart that at least he had come out with a profit. Whether Chen Qiu died or not, it had no relation to him. He also wouldn't get any benefits from it. As long as Or Mountain's camp remained, regardless of how Chen Qiu and the 4 clan patriarchs settled their differences, it wouldn't be related to him. Yanqiu entered the tent and took out a divine jade tile, then fused a thread of divine power into it. Soon, ripples appeared on the surface of the divine tile. After a long while, Jiaoxiu's voice came from the jade tile, "Yanqiu, what's the matter?" When he said that, the voices of the other 3 patriarchs also came through the divine jade tile, and Yanqiu heard that they were in the middle of discussing the matter of the 15 gods. So many days had passed, but the 15 gods still haven't appeared. Godfather then hasn't taken action, just based on that bastard's strength. But if he had this kind of strength since the start, he wouldn't have been coerced by our 4 clans to go to the resource land. Ashbai said that Godfather is in seclusion, so he hasn't done anything. The only possibility is that Godfather passed on some secret cultivation method or treasure to Chen Qiu. But as long as Godfather doesn't come out of seclusion, I don't believe that if the 4 clans attacked with their full strength, we wouldn't be able to kill a false god. We should take our time to consider this matter. The loss of 15 gods is a heavy one for the 4 clans, but it isn't enough to shake our foundation. If we act rashly and Godfather comes out of seclusion, the ending of the 4 clans will be the same as that of the ancestors. When those words were said, all 4 patriarchs turned silent. They had forced Chen Qiu to go out of the city in order to settle this thorn. Without Chen Qiu, Azura City would again return to the control of the 4 great clans and Ashbai, and Godfather wouldn't be able to blame them. But unfortunately, the 15 gods dispatched by them had disappeared without a trace. Because of that, the 4 clan patriarchs were hesitant to act so as to not further their losses. After a moment of silence, Jiaoxiu sensed ripples on the divine jade tile and suddenly inquired, "Oh right, Yanqiu, what do you want to say? If nothing has happened, you shouldn't get in touch with me but just stall Chen Qiu as long as you can." Clan Patriarch, I was just about to tell you the problem. Chen Qiu relinquished the resources of Or Mountain in exchange for all the laborers of Or Mountain, Yanqiu said. Jiaoxiu coldly snorted and said with a smile, "He doesn't want the resource land? Ground clan is just up and coming, so how will they develop without any resources? Without any resource lands, if ground clans desire to stand on the same footing as the 4 great clans, it is just wishful thinking." The next instant, Jiaoxiu added, "Even if he doesn't want the resource land, you should still think of a way to keep him in the Or Mountain. If he returns, we can't kill him easily." Even if Ashbai clearly expressed that Azura had truly entered seclusion, who among the 4 clan patriarchs would dare to attack if Chen Qiu returned to Azura City? Who would dare to stick their head out and take the risk of getting their family exterminated by Godfather? Their best option was to keep stalling Chen Qiu at Or Mountain while they discussed whether to kill him or not. Yanqiu's forehead filled with cold sweat and he cautiously said, Chen Qiu already left. I couldn't stop him. You couldn't stop him? You, a mid-stage god, couldn't stop a false god? What's the point of you having cultivated for so long then? Jiao Xiu began to curse loudly, feeling furious. Godfather bestowed Chen Qiu with a world in his palm. When he placed all the laborers in it, I sensed the presence of 15 gods, Yan Qiu said. The moment he said that, the ripples on the divine jade tile turned silent and there was no sound from the other end. After a long while, Yan Qiu probed, Clan Patriarch, are you still there? Are you certain that Chen Qiu had a world in his palm? And the presence of 15 gods could be sensed within. I am certain, Yan Qiu said with certainty. Just a moment ago, Li Yunmu had pointed his palm toward him with the intention for him to learn of what was inside. Oh right, Chen Qiu gave me a message to pass on to you as well. He said that he'll be taking his gift and that you should wait for his in return. After Yan Qiu said that, the ripples on the divine jade tile disappeared. He heaved a sigh of relief and stored the divine jade tile away. Once Chen Qiu left the Ore Mountain, he didn't need to do anything more. His report to the clan patriarch was also finished, so he had done everything he needed to do. In the conference hall of Moro clan's residence, the 4 clan patriarchs were sitting with distracted expressions. After a very long time, Jiao Xiu raised his head and looked at the other 3 clan patriarchs. Now what do you have to say about this matter? He asked softly. Should we continue biding our time or use the opportunity that he has yet to return to immediately settle the problem? Deva clan's matriarch's face was covered with a veil, which hid her expression. Only a pair of seductive eyes looked at the ceiling as if pondering over something. After a moment, she turned to Jiao Xiu and earnestly said, Chen Qiu cannot be allowed to remain. We must definitely deal with him before he returns to Azura City. The patriarchs of the other 2 clans didn't say anything, expressing their tacit approval. With Yan Qiu's words, the clan patriarchs understood why the 15 gods had disappeared while trying to kill a false god. It was all because of the world in his palm, or it would be better to call it a world fragment. It was the whole reason as to how Chen Qiu could deal with 15 gods. It could be assumed that they had tricked into entering the world fragment. After refining one, the master of it would become an existence equal to a true god in the world fragment. At that time, even dealing with 15 gods wouldn't be a problem. But the world fragment also had its limitation. As long as the enemy didn't enter it, there was nothing that it could do. The world fragment also confirmed Ashbai's words. Godfather had been in seclusion all along. Without him, even if Chen Qiu possessed the world fragment, he was still an ant in the eyes of the 4 clans. 20 gods should be dispatched from each clan, in addition to the 4 of us. I don't believe Chen Qiu would be able to survive such a fight alive. Everyone should also take out their clan treasures, Jiao Xiu said. He then remembered that a precious treasure of his clan was still in the hands of Chen Qiu, and his heart filled with resentment. The 3 clan patriarchs stood up, and their figures flickered before disappearing. Ming Wang, who was standing by Jiao Xiu's side, bowed slightly and respectfully said, Clan Patriarch, shouldn't this matter be discussed a little more? Godfather has given a world fragment to Chen Qiu, which clearly shows how much importance he places on Chen Qiu. If there are any traces left, the 4 clans. Jiao Xiu waved his hand and said with a frown, it's precisely because of how much importance Godfather places on him that we 4 clans want to kill him. If we waited until he developed further, there would be no space left for us to develop in Azura City. Although the risk is extremely high, the possible profits are also high. As long as Chen Qiu dies, the 4 clans will again extend their control over Azura City, just like before. If he doesn't die, then it won't be any different from the 4 clans being wiped out. You go and inform the Elder Council to dispatch 20 gods to follow me to kill Chen Qiu. Ming Wang replied in agreement and walked out of the main hall. Within an instant, 20 gods came to the residence of each clan. Chapter 914, How do you want to die? The descendants of the 4 clans revealed a hint of fear on their faces after sensing the presence of 20 gods near them. Although the 4 clans had many gods, apart from the few who appeared in the residence, the majority of them would enter the Elder Council after becoming gods and wouldn't come out unless it was an important matter. So when everyone saw 20 gods appear all of a sudden, all descendants panicked. Even the direct descendants, who always acted arrogantly, turned pale upon seeing 20 of their clan's gods and lowered their heads. In the main hall, Xiao Xiu looked at the black-robed god standing opposite to him and muttered, "Let's go." The moment he said that, Xiao Xiu and the 20 gods disappeared without a trace. Only the half-god Ming Wang remained standing on the ground. He heaved a sigh of relief and turned away to leave. The 4 clans had dispatched a total of 60 gods. Together with the 4 patriarchs, it made for a total of 64 gods. H.A.C.K happened to be in seclusion, but no one dared to go out of the city with a swagger. All of them concealed their divine presence. After a moment, on a path 100 meters away from H.A.C.K city, one after another, human silhouettes appeared. Under the lead of the 4 patriarchs, they advanced toward the Ore Mountain. 100 kilometers away from the 4 clan patriarchs, Li Yunmu was collecting the mortal villages. All along the path, the H.A.C.K city's territory was full of holes. In the narrow path among the woods, Li Yunmu was walking with a satisfied expression when the system's voice resounded in his brain. 64 gods are coming from the front, and you don't seem a little bit nervous. Li Yunmu glanced in the direction from which the 4 clan patriarchs were coming and said with a faint smile, "What's there to be nervous about? They are just 64 gods. If I used my full strength, it would end in a few breaths. But the battle of gods hasn't begun yet, and I haven't returned to H.A.C.K city to investigate the other power from beyond the heavens, so I cannot use my full strength so casually." Even if he didn't use demonic transformation or the dark state, which were 2 pinnacle techniques, Li Yunmu's strength was still in the ancient god realm. Above the god realm, every thread of disparity was enormous. Not to mention, the difference between 2 whole realms. Such a disparity couldn't be supplemented by numbers. Even if the injured 5 gods had to deal with the 64 gods, it wouldn't be a major task for them. Then what could be said about Li Yunmu, who was in his peak state? If he wanted to exterminate the 64 gods, it would be extremely easy. He had come to Lanlu in order to get his hands on the heavenly grand ritual to break the Dragon Lady and his daughter's curse of short lives. Right then, he had already obtained heavenly grand ritual, but an even more important matter came to light. He needed to find the power from beyond the heavens colluding with H.A.C.K and uproot it. He also needed to start the battle of gods, since it was about the time all of them fell. If you erupt with ancient god realms cultivation, then based on the distance to H.A.C.K city, H.A.C.K will sense you. You will be exposed and the battle of gods will start. The 5 ancient gods and H.A.C.K will join hands to deal with you. That means that you can't release your full strength, so how will you deal with the 64 gods? The system asked with a carefree smile. The system's words were completely correct. Although Li Yunmu had stolen the heavenly grand ritual, the 5 ancient gods had pointed their lances toward H.A.C.K and even allied with Lakshmi city in campaign against him. If Li Yunmu was discovered at this juncture, then the 5 ancient gods would realize what had happened and sense that there were many problems with the matter regarding heavenly grand ritual. So he could not reveal his full strength. Despite that, a smile appeared at the corner of his lips. Could it be that he wouldn't be able to deal with the 64 gods without revealing his full strength? Not necessarily. Li Yunmu rolled a divine jade tile in his hand and infused it with a thread of divine power. Ripples then emerge on the surface. Brunhilde's voice came through the divine jade tile. "Yunmu, why are you looking for me at this time? If it isn't anything important, then I will talk to you later. Lakshmi city is preparing for war now. Naturally I need something. How long will the preparations for battle take? The 4 clan patriarchs of H.A.C.K city together with 60 gods are heading over here looking for me. I cannot reveal my strength, so I can only borrow your influence to scare them," Li Yunmu said. Just as he finished speaking, Brunhilde's voice came through the divine jade tile. You delay them for a while, our Lakshmi city's gods will quickly set for Azura city, she said in an icy tone. Li Yunmu nodded and put the divine jade tile back into his heavenly world. Did you see, wasn't this matter also settled properly, he mumbled. System. The system was left speechless. It had believed that Li Yunmu had thought of something it hadn't, but it hadn't expected that Li Yunmu would just borrow the influence of the 5 ancient gods and Lakshmi city. As long as the troops of Lakshmi city and the 5 ancient gods charged over, the 4 clan patriarchs and their 60 gods wouldn't last long. Li Yunmu was only afraid that once the 4 clan patriarchs saw the grand army of gods, they would immediately return to Azura city. After a moment, the system said a single sentence. Your method is really perfect. Li Yunmu collected every village he encountered on the path. Ahead of him, the 4 clan patriarchs and the 60 gods were moving at a brisk pace, crossing several meters with each step. The distance between the two sides was quickly decreasing. Just when Li Yunmu placed another village into the heavenly world, the 4 clan patriarchs and 60 gods rushed over. I hadn't thought that the 6th ancestor would be in such a good mood while on the return journey from the Ore Mountain. Is he trying to delay the time of his death? Deva clan's matriarch said with a light smile. Her figure moved as she unleashed the charming technique without anyone noticing it. A smile remained on Li Yunmu's face, and he said without any timidness, while returning from the resource land, I was getting bored, so I wanted to enjoy the scenery. I'm not like the 4 clan patriarchs moving in such a hurry with so many elders. It feel like you are going to a market. The moment he said that, the expressions of the 4 clan patriarchs turned somewhat dark as they looked at Li Yunmu. Jiaoxiu clasped his hands behind his back and said in a calm voice, Does 6th ancestor not understand what exactly the 4 of us came here to do with such great fanfare? Don't you want to kill me? I am only a false god, but you all are so hostile toward me. What's up, are you all afraid that Ground Clan is going to surpass your 4 great clans? Li Yunmu then put on a regretful face and said, I know, the strength of your 4 great clans isn't much. You dispatched 15 gods who couldn't beat even a single false god. Upon hearing the mention of 15 gods, the expressions of the 4 clan patriarchs turned gloomy. If it were not for Godfather bestowing a world fragment to him and the 15 gods being arrogant and entering it, how could they have been subdued so easily? Like an enormous mountain, Rahu clan's patriarch waved his palm leaf-sized large hand and said with savageness, Talk less nonsense, 6th ancestor. Since you are the 6th son of Godfather, we 4 clans want to give you a choice. You can choose how you want to die, and we will do it that way. Chapter 915, If you have the ability, don't run. Li Yunmu looked at the 4 clan patriarchs with a calm expression and spoke with ridicule in his voice. How do I want to die? I want to comply with nature and die of old age. I wonder if the 4 clan patriarchs will satisfy my request. Upon hearing his words, the 4 clan patriarchs sneered. In their eyes, Li Yunmu's words were an enormous joke. Chen Qiu was destined to be an enemy of the 4 clan patriarchs, so giving him the option to choose the method of his death was already being extremely benevolent. Yet Chen Qiu wanted to grow old and die then? Was he playing around? I am afraid that we cannot do as you wish. Since the 6th ancestor couldn't think of a good way to die, then allow the 4 of us to decide for you. Jiaoxiu took a step forward while speaking in a calm voice. He erupted with peak god-level presence after that, and the other 3 clan patriarchs as well as the 60 gods also released their presence. The pressure intimidated the birds and beasts in the surroundings, and they all scattered away. Li Yunmu looked at the enormous formation and asked with a calm face, You want to kill me openly? Deva clan's matriarch waved her jade-white hands and cheerfully said, How can we possibly let you run away? The foundation of the 4 clans is profound, and every clan's elder council has hundreds of gods. Right now, each clan dispatched 20 gods, and each and every one of them possesses profound cultivation. Additionally, We, the 4 patriarchs, also came, so how is it possible that the 6th ancestor, your distinguished self, might be able to run away? If 4 peak stage gods and 60 elders at God Real could not kill one false god, then their cultivation of so many years would have been in vain. Regardless of how highly Godfather valued Chen Qiu and how much he wanted to assist the branch family descendant in his fight against the direct descendants, he would not give away any real treasures to him. After experiencing the rebellion of the 4 clan ancestors, Azura wouldn't believe any of his sons again. Chen Qiu possessed a world fragment, but it could be useless as well as extremely formidable. After all, if the 4 clan patriarchs and 60 gods entered it, they wouldn't be able to defeat Chen Qiu. But the situation was completely different in the outside world. In front of so many enemies, Chen Qiu would be crushed like an ant. That is to say, after the 15 gods you dispatched before were dealt with, none of you dared to move, but when you heard that I possess a world in my palm from Yan Qiu's mouth, you decided to settle the score with me. Yes or no? Is it possible that you didn't stop to think why I did that? After saying that, Li Yunmi revealed a mysterious smile and looked at the 4 clan patriarchs. They were slightly startled by his words. Chen Qiu had come so far precisely because his brain was very sharp. Yet when the 4 clan patriarchs forced him to leave Azura City, he didn't resist in the slightest. At that time, the 4 clan patriarchs believed that Chen Qiu had compromised, because Godfather was in seclusion and he had lost his only backer. Under the coercion of the 4 patriarchs, he could only accept being pushed. After the 15 gods disappeared, the 4 clan patriarchs realized that it hadn't been the case. The reason why Chen Qiu compromised was because he had a trump card in his hands. But Chen Qiu's words just then were like stone being thrown into a calm lake and created ripples. The 4 clan recalled what had happened and thought about it. If Chen Qiu only had one trump card in his hand, he wouldn't have let Yan Qiu see it or allowed him to sense the presence of 15 gods trapped inside. Chen Qiu knew that Yan Qiu would inform the 4 about the matter, which would lure them into his trap. The 4 of them had come with 60 gods, but Chen Qiu was still acting as if it was an ordinary matter. The only explanation for it could be that Godfather was in the vicinity. The 4 clan patriarchs looked at each other, then the divine presence they emitted weakened slightly. The 4 were thinking the same thing, so there was no need to say it aloud. They were all full of terror though. The deaths of the 4 ancestors they had personally witnessed stood before their eyes. Azura was ruthless in dealing with his own sons and even directly killed them. If he was in the vicinity, then the actions of the 4 clans would violate his dignity and what awaited them would be their clan's extermination. Li Yunmu looked at the subtle changes in the expressions of the 4 clan patriarchs, clearly understanding their suspicions that Azura might be in the vicinity. Although they didn't say anything out loud, they were like birds startled by the twang of a bow. What, are you afraid now? Now you understand fear, but I can honestly tell you that Godfather is still in seclusion in Azura City and isn't nearby. How about it, will you heave a sigh of relief? Li Yunmu asked with a smile. The moment he finished, the 4 clan patriarchs did heave a sigh of relief. But when they saw that Li Yunmu was still full of smiles, they began to frown. The matriarch of Deva clan twisted her figure, and looked at Li Yunmu with her phoenix-like eyes. Patriarch Doro's expression was dark. Being played repeatedly while he was the brain of the 4 made him feel really frustrated. You are quite honest. But if Godfather isn't nearby, what other tricks do you still have up your sleeve? Could it be that Godfather has given you a divine weapon? Qiao Xiu said while looking at the calm and collected Li Yunmu. He was trying to probe him with vigilance in his heart. As Li Yunmu continued smiling without saying anything, the system suddenly spoke in his brain. Little Bulletin has brought the gods of Lakshmi City? No, that's not it. The main forces of the 5 ancient gods are also here. They are less than 50 kilometers away. The distance of 50 kilometers was only a matter of a few breaths for 5 ancient gods and the gods dispatched by Lakshmi City. After a moment, Li Yunmu raised his head and looked at the 4 clan patriarchs and 60 gods, then said with a smile, Don't you all want to see what trick I have up my sleeve? Come then, look behind me. The four patriarchs looked at the direction in which Li Yunmu had pointed and waited. Suddenly, a small black dot appeared in the sky. It quickly enlarged, and when Jiaoxiu saw the appearance of the person, he was slightly startled and said in surprise, Yanqiu. When did a mid-stage god Yanqiu become the trump card of Chenqiu? Rahu clan's patriarch noticed that Yanqiu only had the cultivation of mid-stage god and furiously looked at Li Yunmu. He then raised his hand that was as large as a palm leaf and pushed it forward. Shameless! Now drop dead for me! As he shouted out those words, the enormous hand struck Li Yunmu's body, but it faded away upon touch. The four patriarchs looked at Li Yunmu's figure and the sky in Azura City's direction. They could clearly see Li Yunmu leaving behind after images while rapidly flying away. Before the four could react, they heard one more sentence from Li Yunmu. I don't have any tricks, except that thing behind me. Just wait a minute, and if you have ability, don't run away at that time. Chapter 916, The Main Forces. When the four patriarchs finally managed to respond, they gnashed their teeth while looking at Li Yunmu's disappearing silhouette. That bastard fooled us! As those words were spoken, a miserable shriek reached their ears. Jiaoxiu turned his head and examined Yanqiu's expression as the mid-stage god flew through the sky. It distorted when he halted in midair. Jiaoxiu frowned when suddenly a sad melody began to play in the surroundings. The divine technique struck Yanqiu, and he was immediately turned into ashes. An enormous pressure descended then, dispersing the clouds in the sky. Before the four clan patriarchs could respond, the surroundings filled up with human silhouettes. The four stared at them until the figures turned into gods. Among them, a banner appeared, and it had the word Lakshmi written on it. The gods of Lakshmi City. They have come with so many gods. Do they really want to declare a formal war on our Azura City? I don't see ancient goddess Lakshmi either, so she must have not recovered from her injuries, yet they dare to run over here to attack Azura City? Are they trying to court death? Rahu clan's patriarch coldly snorted, not feeling the slightest bit of fear after seeing the numerous gods. Lakshmi City had deployed all its troops, and their formation looked stunning. However, ancient goddess Lakshmi and Lakshmi City under her didn't use the power of belief in cultivation. They relied on cultivating step by step, so the number of gods in Lakshmi City was the lowest among all 7 cities of Lanlu. Azura City had 4 clans, and every clan had around 200 gods. The combined total of that was more than 800 gods. Lakshmi City couldn't resist the might of such a large number of gods. Boom! An ancient god's presence erupted from among the gods of Lakshmi City, and the 4 clan patriarchs found it unfamiliar. It didn't belong to ancient goddess Lakshmi. Shortly after, countless human figures appeared in the sky on both sides. Each of them emitted god-level presence. 2 more banners appeared, and they had Yaksha and Indra written on them. Instantly, the 4 clan patriarchs leaped up and rushed back toward Azura City with the 60 gods following close behind them. Crazy, too crazy. When did Yaksha and Indra decide to join Lakshmi City in attacking Azura City? When the 5 ancient gods saw Godfather kill the 4 ancestors, they didn't dare to attack and retreated, so it is clear that they are apprehensive about Godfather's strength, so why now? The 5 ancient gods have taken action together. Since the subordinates of 2 ancient gods, Yaksha and Indra, came together with the troops of Lakshmi City, the other 3 powers should also be just behind them. Damn it, what exactly is happening? No wonder that bastard ran away so quickly just now. He knew beforehand that the troops of Lakshmi City and the 5 ancient gods were behind him. After saying that, the Doro clan's patriarch felt like he had been struck in the heart and felt extremely depressed. When they all had seen Chenqiu being confident, they had truly believed that he had a trick up his sleeve. But the truth was that he was just using other people's strength to beat his own enemies. In front of such a large wave of gods, who among the 4 clan patriarchs would continue attacking? The four together with their 60 gods were like dregs in front of the armies of the 5 ancient gods, and they scattered after the first charge. While flying through the air, the 4 patriarchs frowned slightly as they thought about the matter of collaboration between the 5 ancient gods and Lakshmi city. How long had it been since the 5 ancient gods who were originally apprehensive had decided to collaborate with Lakshmi city? Could it be that Lakshmi city had another ancient goddess apart from ancient goddess Lakshmi? The calm of Lanlu will be gone. Deva clan's matriarch sighed while leaping through the air. From the time the 7 ancient gods of Lanlu had participated in the first battle of gods, a delicate balance had existed among them, which maintained the peace in Lanlu. But ever since the 7 ancient gods collaborated with the ocean region's gods in the battle against Land of Ice and lost, things had changed. Godfather used the opportunity when the 6 ancient gods were resting to make a move on ancient goddess Lakshmi. Afterwards, she gathered the 5 ancient gods to form an alliance to deal with Godfather. But the 5 ancient gods also colluded with the 4 ancestors of H.A.C.K city and secretly came to the vicinity of H.A.C.K city to find an opportunity to assassinate H.A.C.K. But in the end, when Godfather killed the ancestors, the 5 ancient gods realized how formidable his strength was. In fear, they chose to leave, and they even wouldn't collaborate with the vulnerable Lakshmi city anymore. That was why no one in H.A.C.K city expected that the 5 ancient gods would still choose to collaborate with Lakshmi city in the end. Moreover, they rushed out with a swift and strong assault. The 4 patriarchs glanced back at the numerous gods, afraid that the ancient gods' subordinate gods would leave the ranks to attack them. They worried in their heart as to whether they could resist them or not. Based on the number of gods, H.A.C.K city had complete superiority over Lakshmi city, but when the gods of the other 5 cities were also added, the army of H.A.C.K city would be wiped out. Based on the strength of ancient gods, although Godfather H.A.C.K was formidable, it was unknown whether he could withstand the joined attack of 5 ancient gods and Lakshmi city's new goddess. No one could tell that. If H.A.C.K lost, then H.A.C.K city also wouldn't have a good ending. Damn it, that bastard's luck is really good. Now that the 5 ancient gods and Lakshmi city are attacking, we will be too busy to take care of him, so the calamity will just pass him by, Rahu clan's patriarch bellowed while feeling aggrieved in his heart. His tone was filled with unwillingness, but even if he was willing, what could he do? Deva clan's matriarch and Doro clan's patriarch did not say anything, and Jiaoxiu began to frown. Chen Qiu's silhouette floated in his mind. He felt like things were somewhat strange, everything had happened way too flawlessly. But it was impossible for Chen Qiu to have the strength to make the 5 ancient gods and Lakshmi city cooperate with each other to deal with H.A.C.K city. Moreover, Chen Qiu was also an ancestor of H.A.C.K city, so if H.A.C.K city lost, the respectable status he had obtained would also be lost. He would be reduced to the position of a slave. No matter how Jiaoxiu looked at it, there could be no relation between Chen Qiu and the attack on H.A.C.K city by Lakshmi city and the 5 ancient gods. All of them were gods, so it only took a moment for them to reach H.A.C.K city. When the 4 patriarchs got close to it, they saw Chen Qiu slowly flying a kilometer ahead of them. When they saw his speed, their expressions turned ashen. An army of gods was charging behind them, yet Chen Qiu was flying at such a slow speed. It was like a formless slap on the face of the 4 clan patriarchs. Damn it, he's really arrogant. His luck is good, which is the only reason that such a thing happened. This can't continue. He must die. Even if Godfather loses the battle, I won't let him live long enough to become a servant. During the attack, I will take his dog life. At that time, killing him will be like catching a fish. The 4 clan patriarchs hatefully talked down Chen Qiu. He was like a thorn stuck in their throat that made them uncomfortable at all times. Unless the thorn is taken out, they would never feel comfortable again. Chen Qiu was leaning against the wall of H.A.C.K city when the 4 patriarchs and 60 gods descended on the ground. They were completely defeated in their campaign. Chapter 917, The Battle of Gods. So many of you came, but you still couldn't do anything about me. How about it, 4 clan patriarchs together with 60 god elders came for me, but I still managed to return alive, Li Yunmu said with a calm expression while leaning against the wall. Humph! The 4 patriarchs coldly snorted. They could think of only one thing right then, and it was that such a vile character had won. The 4 clan patriarchs were quite sullen. They had taken 60 gods to kill Chen Qiu, but he still returned in intact condition. It was simply a huge joke. The 4 patriarchs thought that they should have attacked Chen Qiu as soon as they saw him, which would have swiftly sealed the matter. Then, Chen Qiu would not have been able to return to H.A.C.K city and wouldn't be standing against the gate and talking arrogantly before them. They were filled with regret. When Li Yunmu saw that the 4 patriarchs weren't saying anything, he deliberately provoked them. Do you remember the words I asked Yan Qiu to pass on to you? If you don't remember, then go and carefully recall them. As he said that, a cold light flashed through the eyes of the 4 clan patriarchs while they looked at him. Yan Qiu had said that Chen Qiu would give them a return gift after coming back to H.A.C.K city. It was in reply to them dispatching 15 gods to kill Chen Qiu. His promise was to show them in front of H.A.C.K. With the 15 gods in his hand, Godfather would definitely believe his words. The expressions of the 4 patriarchs turned dark, and a divine presence erupted from their bodies as if they were planning to kill Chen Qiu right in front of the gate to H.A.C.K city. After all, if they allowed him to meet with H.A.C.K with the 15 gods in his hand, the 4 clans would be in a crisis. He might not say anything while the battle of the gods raged on around them, but if he won, the 4 clans wouldn't have a good ending. Because of that, it would be better to just kill Chen Qiu at the city gate. After deciding on that, the patriarchs looked at each other, and divine power bubbled out from their hands. Suddenly though, an ancient god's presence erupted from the depths of H.A.C.K city, and the 4 patriarchs pulled back their divine presence. A hint of fear appeared in their eyes as they sighed. The 5 ancient gods and Lakshmi city's goddess had appeared, so H.A.C.K sensed them and came out of seclusion. This took away the last chance the 4 had to kill Chen Qiu. The next instant, a figure appeared between Li Yunmu and the 4 clan patriarchs. H.A.C.K looked at them and the 60 gods behind them with a dark expression. What exactly is going on here? After seeing Chen Qiu alone, H.A.C.K had a good guess of what had transpired. Using the chance of him being in seclusion, the 4 clans had really taken action. H.A.C.K had promoted the branch descendant and given him control of H.A.C.K city as well as the 4 clans, but once he came out, he saw the 4 clan patriarchs and 60 gods standing in front of Li Yunmu. Wasn't it obvious then that they were thinking of using the opportunity of their godfather being in seclusion to kill the person he had promoted? So much for the 4 clans being cautious. The clan patriarchs became terrified and knelt on the ground before respectfully saying, "Respected greetings, Godfather." The 60 gods also knelt on the ground and respectfully kowtowed. Li Yunmu looked at H.A.C.K then and said in a calm voice, "Godfather came out of seclusion. The patriarchs of the 4 clans came here just a moment ago when we felt an enormous amount of divine presence near H.A.C.K city." The moment he said that, the 4 clan patriarchs were startled and looked up with suspicion in their hearts. H.A.C.K turned around to look at Li Yunmu and asked with a frown, "Really?" H.A.C.K didn't really believe Li Yunmu's words. If they had sensed the formidable divine presence outside H.A.C.K city, the 4 clan patriarchs could have come out. The gods of all clans could also take action upon noticing such a thing. It wasn't out of the realm of possibility. But as it happened, only 60 gods had come. If they weren't present to deal with Li Yunmu, then what else were they doing here in such numbers? But H.A.C.K didn't expect that before the 4 patriarchs could make an explanation, Li Yunmu would help them out. That wasn't a good sign. He had chosen Chen Qiu to strengthen the branch family descendants in order to restrain the direct descendants. If both sides joined together, his actions would have been meaningless. Patriarch Doro lowered his head and followed Li Yunmu's words. "Yes, Godfather. We foresensed the appearance of divine presence outside H.A.C.K city and we brought some clan elders to investigate." Although he didn't know what kind of ghost had come to possess Chen Qiu, it didn't matter at that moment. If with Azura present in front of him Chen Qiu didn't reveal the matter which could shake the four clans and even help them exonerate themselves, he would naturally follow him. Li Yunmu saw the suspicious gaze which Azura had cast toward him and said in a flat voice, "Really, Godfather?" He knew that Azura would be suspicious if he helped the four clans exonerate themselves and would even begin to wonder whether he was collaborating with the four clans or not, but Li Yunmu couldn't be bothered about it right then. The main forces of the five ancient gods and Lakshmi city had already arrived before Azura city, so the battle of gods would definitely start in a few moments. Once it began, Azura and the five ancient gods would die, so there was no need for him to pay any attention to it. All right. Azura's expression was completely calm when he shifted his gaze toward the divine presences outside Azura city. His face was completely blank. He could sense that the main forces had arrived at Azura city, but what he couldn't understand was the reason behind the collaboration of the five ancient gods and Lakshmi city as well as their timing. Azura had thought that he knew the thoughts of the five ancient gods when he had killed the ancestors and they left after being intimidated. Based on the personalities of the five ancient gods, they should be in the divine palace right then, recuperating by using the heavenly grand ritual. Only when their injuries recovered should they take any action. Azura knew what the five ancient gods would do, so he had entered seclusion with his heart at ease. He had anticipated that the battle of gods would only begin after 10 years. But only a few days had passed, and the five ancient gods changed their mind and decided to collaborate with Lakshmi city to declare war on Azura city. After examining the gods arrayed before his city, Azura's expression grew dark. Given the presence of such a large army, it was clear that the battle was about to start. The five gods were obviously in collusion with Lakshmi city and had dispatched the majority of their gods, but why? If it was said that the five ancient gods had taken action for ancient goddess Lakshmi, Azura would not believe it. Lanlu was different from other regions where the gods were still bound by their emotions. Although the seven gods of Lanlu were born together, there were no sentiments among the seven of them. Before the power of belief was discovered, the seven ancient gods had lived harmoniously like brothers and sisters, but after the first battle of gods, the seven ancient gods began to guard against each other. I will go and see what exactly is going on. You all return and gather all the gods. If the negotiation fails, the battle of gods will start. Azura took a step forward and disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already standing in front of the huge army. The clan patriarchs rose up from the ground and looked at Li Yunmu's smiling face with cold snorts. Patriarch Rahu then disdainfully said, "Don't think that you can curry favor with us just because you exonerated us." Chapter 918, Shifting Attention. Li Yunmu shrugged his shoulders and looked at the clan patriarchs. "I fear that you are thinking too much. The reason why I helped you make excuses in front of Godfather wasn't in order to curry favor with you all and resolve the hatred between us. I just don't like other people taking action on my behalf. I like settling things myself." Ha 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 ha, sixth ancestor is really confident. You even dare to be so arrogant in front of our four clans. If you didn't rely on Godfather, you would been crushed under our feet like an ant long ago. This lowly servant will wait to see how exactly the sixth ancestor will deal with the four clans without relying on Godfather, Deva clan's matriarch said with a sneer. After she finished speaking, the four patriarchs walked into Azura city to return to their residences and gather the gods of their clan. Li Yunmu unhurriedly walked to the lower city and the Colosseum in the middle of it. In just a short few days, all the houses of the lower city had been torn down. The destruction had even spread to the middle city. The houses near the gate were all gone. When Li Yunmu reached the Colosseum, two figures appeared in front of him and respectfully said, "Lord has returned." Did the four clans create any difficulties for Lord during the trip to the resource land? Rat and Old Bastard raised their heads with excited expressions. When Li Yunmu saw the two of them, a smile appeared at the corners of his lips, and he slowly said, "I've returned. Stand up now and let's go inside before talking." Li Yunmu advanced toward the Colosseum while saying that, Old Bastard and Rat respectfully followed behind him. After entering the Colosseum, Madame and Du Minjian came over from outside. Upon seeing Li Yunmu, they happily rushed over and knelt on the ground. "Lord, you finally returned." Li Yunmu nodded and saw that their cultivation base was no longer at half-god step, but rather at god realm. Rat had bestowed power of belief to the two of them, which showed that they were reliable. After coming to the conference room, Li Yunmu sat down on the main seat. He looked at the four people underneath and thought deeply. The battle of gods was about to start, and the ground clan as well as Rat and the other three belonged to H.A.C.K clan, so they might not follow him in what he planned to do. After all, when the four of them joined Li Yunmu, it was because he was impersonating Chen Qiu, who was someone from H.A.C.K clan. If the four of them learned of Li Yunmu's true identity, they might not agree to follow him. After a moment of silence, Li Yunmu's figure flickered and revealed his original appearance. When the four people underneath saw it, their eyes went wide, and divine presence erupted from their bodies. "Who are you? Why are you impersonating our lord?" Rat shouted out first. "Be relieved, I am your lord. But previously, I was using Chen Qiu's identity to infiltrate Azura City. Now though, I want you see my true identity, because I want to ask you whether you want to follow me or not." The moment he said that, Rat and the other three fell silent. They watched Li Yunmu without saying a word. "I am not someone from Azura City or even Lanlu. I came to Azura City to get something. Right now, I have obtained that thing, which only leaves behind a final matter, and after that I will leave Lanlu. Thus I want to ask you all now, do you want to follow me or will you stay behind? If you wish to remain, then after I go, Ground Clan's matters will be left to the four of you. If you agree to follow me, perhaps you may encounter a lot of danger in the future." After Li Yunmu finished speaking, he calmly waited for Rat and others to make their choice. If they wanted to stay behind, then he would hand over the Ground Clan for them to manage. After all, they were gods, so it could be considered as a good arrangement. If they followed him, however, the four of them would have to start cultivating from the beginning after he took away power of belief. After a long time, Rat, who stood in the front, looked at Li Yunmu and suspiciously asked, "Lord, are you really our lord?" "Naturally." After hearing that, a smile appeared on Rat's face as he knelt on the ground, and he said with excitement, "Wherever Lord goes, I will follow. Back then, I was constantly fighting for my life, but Lord saved me, so naturally this life belongs to Lord." Me too, Old Bastard shouted out while excitedly waving the hatchet in his hand. Li Yunmu nodded in satisfaction, then looked at Madame and Du Minjian. Neither of them hesitated. They lowered their heads and said with a smile, "Wherever Lord goes, we will follow. Since this is the case, then you four should summon the descendants of Ground Clan. Once the battle of gods starts, they will only be used as cannon fodder. At that time, when the battle starts, you four will follow me," Li Yunmu said. The four people flickered and disappeared from the room. Li Yunmu then stood up and walked to the window, where he looked in the direction of Lower City and mumbled, "Where is beyond the heavens hiding?" Once the battle of gods started, Li Yunmu wouldn't need to pay any attention to Azura. Even if Azura was a quasi-master god, he would be restrained after running into 5 ancient gods who would be doing their utmost and Brunhilde whose strength was at the peak of ancient god realm. Right then, there was only one matter left in front of Li Yunmu, and it was to find the people from beyond the heavens hiding in Azura City. When the seals of master gods were removed, ways to enter the origin world appeared. The powers from beyond the heavens guarding outside then dispatched people to infiltrate the origin world. Li Yunmu thus wanted to eradicate them one by one, so as to avoid the gods of the origin world collaborating with them for benefits or to save their lives. "What do you intend to do? Want to eradicate the people from beyond the heavens one by one?" the system asked in his mind. "What about it? If beyond the heavens spread through the origin world, who knows how many gods will secretly join them? If I hadn't gone to the divine palace for heavenly grand ritual, I fear that even I wouldn't have discovered an enemy like beyond the heavens in the origin world, Li Yunmu said in a calm voice. After a moment of silence, the system said, when the seals are opened, the flaws in the origin world seal will appear. As long as the leaks exist, even if you eradicate those who have infiltrated from beyond the heavens, another wave of people will be sent by beyond the heavens. They'll come in a steady flow. That's why rather than going through the trouble of eradicating the infiltrators, it would be better to strike at the source, the system said without a hurry. Source? Li Yunmu wrinkled his eyebrows and asked, you mean to say that I should open the seal, allowing master gods to come out? And revealing the origin world in front of beyond the heavens? Doing that would indeed protect us from gods secretly colluding with beyond the heavens, but once the origin world is revealed, we won't be able to defeat beyond the heavens with the origin world's current strength. Do you really think that a true god is just a decoration? The system asked with a dark look. Li Yunmu laughed but didn't reply. The system was indeed a true god, but beyond the heavens had at least 10 quasi-true gods as well as a true god. How could one person stop such a magnificent lineup? There was no way Li Yunmu could listen to the system's words and continue removing the seals. Chapter 919, The Battle Begins. In the sky outside Azura City, Azura was floating while wearing golden armor and his hair in a ponytail like before. His wicked face was completely emotionless as he looked at the army of gods underneath. The army of gods were standing on the ground while the ancient gods and Brunhild were flying in the air. You all leading the gods underneath, why have you come to my Azura city? A smile appeared on Azura's wicked face when he spoke while looking at the 5 ancient gods. When he finished, he took note of Brunhilde, and curiosity appeared in his eyes. When did another ancient goddess appear in Lanlu? The 5 ancient gods didn't reply to Azura's question. Some of them had sneers on their faces while others had cold expressions. Brunhilde tucked her hair back and said with a calm expression, I am the new ancient goddess of Lakshmi city. If you haven't forgotten, then you have something of ancient goddess Lakshmi. I have come to retrieve it in her place. Azura nodded and said with some surprise in his voice, no wonder, Lanlu has a new ancient goddess. Such a thing can only happen in the territory of that disappointing sister. Apart from ancient goddess Lakshmi, the other ancient gods all used the power of belief to strengthen themselves. The amount necessary to ancient gods was extremely large, so power of belief was viewed as a precious treasure. Azura had known that the 4 ancestors secretly stole part of power of belief for cultivation because he counted how much was offered to him every year, so as soon as the amount was smaller, he immediately knew that something was off. The other 5 ancient gods did the same. Because of this, it was completely impossible for an ancient god to appear from the subordinates of Azura or the 5 ancient gods. Only ancient goddess Lakshmi and the music clans of Lakshmi city stored the power of belief in their instruments. Ancient god realm was difficult to reach without relying on power of belief, but it wasn't impossible, so one ancient god being born in Lakshmi city was completely reasonable. If little sister left something here, why don't I know about it? Azura asked without changing his expression. The 5 ancient gods sneered at him, while Brunhilde smiled. She then said, Azura really knows how to joke. I wonder whether you have already swallowed ancient goddess Lakshmi's soul. The smile at the corners of Azura's lips froze, and he looked at Brunhilde without saying anything else. He hadn't thought that Lakshmi city's new ancient goddess would directly say such a thing in front of the 5 ancient gods. Even if he possessed the strength of a quasi-master god, he needed time to completely devour ancient goddess Lakshmi's soul. If he didn't enter seclusion and wholeheartedly focus on fusing with it for a long time, he would have to divide a portion of his strength to suppress it. Speaking of which, the 5 ancient gods already knew how much strength Azura possessed. But most likely because of the words of the newly advanced ancient goddess, they had decided to jointly attack him. That put Azura in a difficult situation, and ancient goddess Lakshmi's situation should be known by everyone anyway. She only existed as a part of a soul, so she should also be concerned about the 5 ancient gods. Why were they acting like this then? Still pretending, Azura? I ask, why did you display your strength when dealing with your sons? It was to put a fear toward you in the heart of us 5 ancient gods so that we would retreat. Yaksha swayed the divine prong in his heart, causing a strong smell of blood to spread through the air. Azura, we were born at the same time, so we understand each other all too well. We are completely clear about the amount of strength you can use at this moment. I want to ask you one question now though, are you finally regretting stealing the heavenly grand ritual and forcing us 5 ancient gods and ancient goddess Lu Qing to collaborate? The crack between Yaksha's eyebrows opened, revealing his divine eye. After forming the alliance, ancient goddess Lu Qing had told them about the true situation of ancient goddess Lakshmi. Once the 5 gods understood it, they became even more certain about being able to deal with Azura. Azura was startled by Indra's words. Heavenly grand ritual was in your hands, so why are you looking for me after losing it? When he said that, the 5 ancient gods sneered again. The man could really act. The next instant, the 5 ancient gods' divine power bubbled forth as each of them threw their bloodline ability toward Azura. Brunhilde transformed into an afterimage to look for a chance to attack. Multicolored lights blossomed in the sky as ancient gods' presences spread everywhere. Azura avoided all the ancient gods' divine techniques while being on alert about Brunhilde hiding in the surroundings. Don't force me, or no one will come out intact. I have never touched your heavenly grand ritual. Yaksha stopped in midair, and the divine prong in his hand flickered with golden light. It fused with his bloodline, which was extremely devilish. I will believe your ghost. You are the biggest liar. Azura, I will kill you today. Azura felt very sullen after hearing him. He had hid his strength during the attack on the land of ice, but when he went to devour ancient goddess Lakshmi, something went wrong. Even so, he remained calm and unhurried. It was mainly because his strength was the highest among the 7 ancient gods and the closest to Master God realm. When ancient goddess Lakshmi and the 5 ancient gods thought to collaborate, Azura used the 4 ancestors to attract the 5 ancient gods and revealed his true strength, which made them retreat in apprehension. Everything went according to his plan. What had happened then? Why did the 5 ancient gods suddenly say that he had stolen heavenly grand ritual when he didn't know anything about it? He could only guess that someone behind the scenes was framing him. When he thought of that possibility, he felt even more sullen. Who was it that had such large guts to scheme against him and the 5 ancient gods? In the residences of the 4 clans of Azura City, the clan patriarchs of each clan summoned the elders of Elder Council to discuss how to deploy troops in the Battle of Gods. Everyone sensed the pressure of ancient gods' presence outside, and a hint of panic was on their faces. So they have started fighting for real. The 4 clan patriarchs turned to look outside and wondered whether they should use their full strength in the war or save some of it to make sure that the descendants who hadn't matured yet could escape Lanlu. None of the 4 patriarchs had anticipated that the battle gods would begin so quickly. During the first battle of gods, the ancient gods of Lanlu had first tested each other and only small-scale conflicts erupted. Only after a very long time did the 7 ancient gods finally start the genuine battle of gods and contested each other over territory. But this time was completely different. The 5 ancient gods allied with Lakshmi City and dispatched soldiers toward Azura City without any warning. The speed of events was extremely fast, as if everyone wanted to deal with Azura as fast as possible. When faced with 5 ancient gods together with an unfamiliar ancient goddess, regardless of how formidable Azura was, he was still an ancient god who hadn't crossed into Master God realm. It was extremely hard to say who would win in such a battle. Because of that, the 4 clan patriarchs ordered a few god elders to take the clan's younger generation and leave Lanlu immediately. If the situation stabilized, the elders could return with the younger generation, but if Azura lost the war, they could settle in the ancient lands which didn't have any gods anymore. Chapter 920, Responsibility. While the 4 clans were choosing elders and summoning their descendant, Li Yunmu was standing on a high platform in the Colosseum. Rat and other 3 gods were standing behind him while the ground clan's descendants were underneath. The difference from before was that each and every one of the ground clan's descendants was wearing proper clothes with a lively gaze. Less than a few days after the ground clan was established, Li Yunmu had left after sharing all the future plans with Rat. Madam, who was in charge of the spinning and weaving unit, then summoned the women of ground clan to choose a few with dexterous hands and started getting clothes knitted day and night. Other people were chosen for construction and forging metal. The enthusiasm in the ground clan ran high, and everyone worked against the clock to collect credit points and exchange them for martial arts. Some of the ground clan's brightest descendants then advanced to flux experts. Such a great transformation could only happen because of the 6th ancestor standing on the platform. Today, I ask everyone to leave their work and come to the Colosseum. I have to announce something. This matter concerns your future as well as mine. Before Li Yunmu could finish, a loud sound rang, and the entire Colosseum shook. The ground clan's descendants looked around in confusion, not knowing what was happening. Li Yunmu paused for a moment to look at the sky above, then turned back to the crowd below. What you all sensed just now is related to what I wanted to say. I'm not someone from Lanlu and I'm not from Azura City. I only came here to obtain something. That matter is finished now, and the loud sound from just a moment ago tells that Azura and the 5 ancient gods have begun fighting. The second battle of gods has started. Therefore, I want to ask you all, whether you want to follow me or remain in Azura City. After he said this, the ground clan's descendants standing underneath with confusion on their faces were startled. The 6th ancestor's words were extremely unexpected, and they were unable to understand them for a moment. Once they grasped what was being said though, they began to discuss whether to stay in Azura City where they had been living their whole life or follow the 6th ancestor who has given them another life. Li Yunmu waited calmly. The matter of moving was difficult to comprehend for the descendants of ground clan in a short time. Once they discussed the matter, they raised their heads to look at Li Yunmu and spoke in unison. Regardless of whether you are from Azura City or not, you gave us a new life. You are our Lord Ancestor, so wherever you go, we will follow. Their crisp and resonant voices reverberated through the Colosseum. Good, good, good. Li Yunmu felt a great amount of responsibility after hearing the clear voice of ground clan's descendants. Back when he had saved his earth, he had the mentality of saving his own family and that was it. Right now, however, the ground clan's descendants put their complete trust in him, which made him want to bring them to earth. Li Yunmu extended his hand, and it stretched like a snake toward the Colosseum stage. It then enlarged to the size of a small mountain. A small crack was in his palm. It pulled apart and formed a huge gate. Enter the heavenly world and wait until I bring you to your new home. When he said that, all the disciples of ground clan entered the heavenly world. After a long time, when the final person went inside, Li Yunmu pulled back his palm. Rat arrived then and looked at Li Yunmu. Lord, what to do now? Go outside Azura City, Li Yunmu said and leaped into the sky. Rat and the other 3 followed behind. They turned into rays of light flying outside Azura City. When they arrived outside Azura City, the 4 clan patriarchs as well as many elders were standing at the gate and looking at the battle of the ancestors in midair with dignified expressions. Li Yunmu led Rat and the other 3 to the front. He stopped side by side with the 4 clan patriarchs and Ashbai. I believe the ground clan has many people. It is that which has taken so much of the 6th ancestor's time, so he could only hurry over now. Patriarch Doro looked from the corner of eye, and a hint of ridicule appeared in his 12 eyes. Ground clan has been established recently, so having 4 gods is already very good. 6th ancestor, after the battle of ancient gods, the gods of both sides will enter a chaotic melee. I will remind you out of kindness that you should not run around wildly at that time. If the 4 gods of the ground clan die during the chaos of war, it will be extremely unfortunate. The 4 clan patriarchs originally had worried expressions, but when they saw Li Yunmu and the other four arrive, they couldn't help but mock him. Li Yunmu stood at Ashbai's side with a wooden expression. Rat and the other three behind him, however, looked at the four clan patriarchs with cold eyes and sneers on their faces. You all heard the warning of the clan patriarchs. When the chaotic battle begins, you must take advantage of the chaos to survive. After all, the ground clan has only 4 gods. If you die, it would be extremely unfortunate, Li Yunmu said with a faint smile. The 4 clan patriarchs snorted, but didn't say any more. Everyone's gaze turned toward the distorted brilliance in the sky. In the origin world whose master gods were sealed, the ancient gods were the most formidable existences. Among the 7 figures struggling in the sky, each was a peak existence. The 7 ancient gods used divine techniques filled with magnificent divine power one after another, and the space around them distorted. It cracked from the constant barrage of divine techniques being thrown around. The brilliant light was also enough to blind the eyes of gods standing underneath, so they were unable to see how the battle was proceeding. If any of divine techniques fell down, they could instantly kill the god on which they landed. A ripple appeared where the ancient gods were fighting and spread in all directions. Wherever it went, the surrounding clouds disappeared, and countless cracks appeared in space. It seemed like it was about to shatter into pieces. A black shadow flew out from the radiance, but it stopped after retreating a few meters. Once the divine techniques disappeared, the lights faded away, and 6 ancient gods became visible. A trail of blood was at the corner of Azura's lips. His hair had come undone, and there were cracks on his golden armor. He cut a sorry figure. The ancient gods and Brunhilde standing not far away from him were in perfect condition. They were still in their peak state. In the first clash, Azura had lost by a little. Among the 5 ancient gods, Vishnu's figure was fluctuating constantly. Sometimes he would turn into a young girl sitting on an enormous tiger, while at other times, he transformed into a god wearing golden armor and emitting golden light. Regardless of which shape he took though, a cold smile remained at the corner of his lips. Azura, you had indeed concealed yourself deeply, he said with ridicule in his voice. 6 ancient gods jointly attacked you, but you still stopped them with only light injuries. It seems that if we hadn't come to fight you and allowed you to develop, I am afraid that we would have been swallowed by you in the end. Azura sneered, then looked at Vishnu. Soon after, his gaze flitted past the other 4 gods and he calmly said, Since you've learned of my strength, retreat now. I will give you 10 years to recover from your injuries.